Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of He's Not Wrong. I'm your host, Chad D, and I am so happy to have another repeat guest turn into a correspondent today. Michael Coker, more commonly known as Cokehead, spelled Koch, head on social media, was one of my very first guests when this podcast launched exactly a year ago today. And I'm so excited to have him back. Not only have our platforms grown, but so have our perspectives and our approaches to what's going on in the world right now. We cover a lot in this episode, so buckle up. Get ready. Here we go. Michael, welcome back to He's Not Wrong. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good. Glad to be back. It's a lot has happened since the last time.
A lot has happened. Today is actually the 1 year anniversary for He's Not Wrong. And I'm so happy that it's you coming back on because I know we've been talking about having you back on for several months now. And it just lined up that you were available on the 1 year anniversary. So I'm really happy
Yeah.
that to celebrate this milestone, it is you coming back on almost a year to the day. So I'm very, very appreciative. Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations. What a milestone.
So listen, before we get started, I just have to let you know that I am pissed. And I had this note written down because I was like, I have to fight him over this. And I know I DM'd you on TikTok about this. I am so mad. And my anger was reignited this morning because I saw on Instagram you had like 20 hashtags. And on TikTok, you like use 30 hashtags. And on these platforms, I still
Hashtag
only
bait.
Yes, I only am able to use 5 hashtags, and if I ever try to do more than that, I get limited, they don't let me add anymore, and then I see you post and you have all these beautiful hashtags and the perfect SEO. I'm like, "How does he do it?"
I don't have an answer. I don't know. I started getting comments like that. I guess, whenever the whole takeover happened, or maybe somewhere around there. But I'm not sure. I never get like that sort of notification or that flag or anything like that that's like you can't use anymore. On Instagram, they don't let you use more than 30, I think it is. Um, but I never get like the 5 limit or anything like that. I'm so sorry for the people that have to deal with that.
I am limited to 5 on Instagram as well. It is a 5 limit on Instagram and TikTok.
Wow. Oh,
Mhm.
that's something.
We're
Sign of the
gonna talk
times.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about suppression and censorship, and I'm starting to think, is the hashtag limit a sign of censorship and suppression? We'll get into it. That's where my brain's going. I just feel attacked.
Yeah.
I'm angry and I want answers. So,
Limited. Yeah. Very
so
much so.
a lot has happened in the past year since we last talked on here. You came on, and our conversation was heavily rooted in information versus disinformation and where to find facts and how to find sources that are telling the truth. I
Hmm.
feel like personally in the past year, all of that shit's out the window. That is just like
Absolutely.
that is out the window. We are seeing censorship at levels that I have not seen ever before on all platforms. And I'm starting to view censorship as a form of disinformation. And I want your opinion on that statement.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. I think that that's the intention, right? Like,
Mhm.
first of all, understatement of the year that things have, kind of been thrown out the window in the last year because, we not only are we seeing, these brands and organizations and companies, pandering and bending the knee so that I guess there's two reasons for that. A lot of the time you see these people doing this just to curry favor and to maximize on success and profits and all that. But I think there's also another arm of it where this is being done so that they can just stay afloat and stay viable. And as, you know, backwards as it seems, I think when you look at like, governmental organizations or agencies and stuff like that, that get their funding and they get told, you're either going to have this much money, you're going to have to cut this many people, this much funding, etc. A choice has to be made. And even though I, in a vacuum, wouldn't agree with bending the knee for any reason,
Yeah.
complying in advance for any reason, I I do kind of see the trade-off there. And it sucks. But I think that that's one thing we're seeing. And then on top of that, we're also seeing everyone deconstruct this propaganda that was already so baked in from the start. And I think that they kind of go hand in hand. They're, I guess, kind of contributing and causing one another to happen and get worse and more prominent. And yeah, it's a very different world than it was even 6 months ago, a year ago. And we have to be able to know that anything we're looking at could be false or not real or edited or tweaked or said a certain way to make you think something, even if the truth is something else.
Mhm.
And I think everything needs to be double checked, needs to be put through like an AI scanner or both or neither. It's you don't know now.
Yes.
And that's the scary part.
It's so scary because there's so much content that I've seen even since Iran and that whole war began a few weeks ago. Just like videos, they look so real. And it's
Yeah.
the AI is being used as propaganda in such a scary way that people are not recognizing. And the Trump administration is using it to try to like bolster their claims that like
Hmm.
we have to be in this war, we have to be engaged, we need the public support. And AI videos attacking Americans or attacking American bases or whatever are being used to bolster those claims. And it is so scary. But with the censorship that's happening, the disinformation that is out there, who is it benefiting? Because people seem so angry, and you have a large following on social media. So I feel like you have your finger on the pulse of how a lot of people feel. And people aren't dumb. People are aware that this is happening. And it's like, yeah, they're bending the knee to the administration, say like CBS and Larry
Hmm.
Ellison and that whole debacle. You have that going on, but people aren't dumb. They know what's happening and it's not benefiting their viewership and this is going to hurt them long term. So like why? Like why are they doing it now? Who is it benefiting? Because it's clearly not the public.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The opposite of the general public, which is, if the general public is the 99%, the 1% is who's being benefited, or who, this is being done to benefit. They manage to, you know, grab everything, take hold of everything. And I'm not sure if they knew from the start. They seemed pretty confident at the beginning, as we
Yeah.
remember now, so not very much. So I don't know if they always knew from the start that people would eventually come to realize and grow to be very against what they're doing. But I like to call it like their death rattle, their extinction burst. They they know the end is coming, and they are doing anything and everything, even if they know that we know it's all BS. They don't care. They're doing whatever they can to keep a hold of all of this that they've somehow managed to, get their like white knuckle grip on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's one of the tools at their disposal for trying, I guess, and failing, but still trying to convince us of something they either truly do believe or know is not the truth, but they're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one is scarier, if they really truly believe what they're saying, or if they're being purposefully disingenuous. Either way, it's a mess.
I think it's both. I think they know they're being purposefully disingenuous, but I genuinely believe that they believe in what they are doing. Have
Yes,
you
I
have
think
you
that's a great
heard
way to say it.
have you heard about all of the reports coming out with Iran and this being a holy war and how they're doing this to bring about Armageddon?
Yes, and at this point, like, like, sure, I think that they think that. Like, who was it? Was it Lindsey Graham that came out and said that? And it's I think that they again, I don't know if they really truly believe that or if they just know that's, poking the like white Christian nationalist bear and, getting those people to feel like threatened or like
Yeah.
their way of life is completely at risk. And if that is maybe, like I said, like just part of their last ditch extinction burst effort to keep hold of these people that they need to stay in power. And it's it's hard to judge on any given day whether or not that's working. I feel like slowly but surely we're seeing, one layer after another of the MAGA base sort of peel off. They do it silently, most of them, so it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to judge. But we do see those that are coming out. I mean, just the woman that has been going viral the last week or so for being a triple Trumper and saying, I regret it, and but people are being mean to me, and it's just like like they're deconstructing and they're realizing, but they're not fully there yet. So I think we're still in the middle of it all, and some have left fully, some are working on it, and some are still there.
Yeah. Yeah. The writing's been on the wall for a while, especially with the Christian nationalism and it being a disease. It's something that I've said on the podcast for a full
Mhm.
year now, that Christian nationalism is a disease to this country. And I really do believe that I don't think Trump thinks he's going to bring about Armageddon, but I think he knows that there are people who actually do believe that. And it's like the groundwork for years has been laid for a war like this to happen and for people and their followers to actually believe that it is a holy war, to give Trump and his regime the power and the ability to get away with what they're doing and to have the support that
Mhm.
they need to get away with it. And that is horrifying to think that it's been in front of us this entire time and they have successfully, for now, gotten away with it.
Right. I think that's one of the parts that I always come back to is how seemingly easily it's worked.
Yeah.
And like you said, the writing's been on the wall for a long time. And as someone who, has only become very, very engaged in the last year and a half or so, in the lead up to the 2024 election, as I feel was the case for a lot of people,
Yeah.
I personally, when I think about it, I can't imagine having been deeply involved or, just even been aware of how things really are and operate for like years and decades and like their whole life even. And I struggle really to wrap my brain around like I guess maybe being a little bit thankful that like I didn't know because ignorance is bliss in a way. And I think a lot about how the timing of it all seems like, and I'm not one to, be religious or woo woo or whatever, but it seems
Sure.
like kind of kismet in a way. Like
Yep.
this is causing us all to realize. And, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this, but sometimes I think, you know, it was better that Kamala lost. Like if she had won, granted, none of this would be happening. She's she was right about that. She was right about a lot of it, as she reminds us. But I think none of this would, in that same way, I guess, none of this would be happening for the better and for the worse.
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't know anything about Epstein that we know now. We wouldn't be rallying behind one another to, fix the system, tear down the system.
Sure.
It would have
Sure.
just kept going on. And obviously, I'm not sitting here being like, I'm glad she lost because obviously that was like a devastating loss
Yeah.
and still, pulls on my heartstrings every time I think about it. But I think there's a bittersweet sort of irony there that, this was kind of maybe meant to happen this way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough thing to kind of grapple with, but I find myself thinking about it a lot.
Yeah, I with my friends, whenever they're going through something difficult, I always say like, "There's a silver lining to this." For instance, last week, a friend of mine was laid off, and I was talking her
Mm,
through it, and I was like, "That like, no, like this is actually good. You wanted to get out of the industry. This is actually a door opening, not a door closed." And in that same vein, it's like it's horrible that Kamala lost. Like it took a solid year to get out of that depressive state, but
yeah.
I like if I'm gonna say it to my friends, I'm gonna say it here because it's something that I believe
Mm,
wholeheartedly in all aspects of life is that there's silver linings to everything. And the silver lining to her loss to what you just said is the fact that it's all out in the open now. This isn't just gonna
yeah,
continue. It's not like this is getting punted down the field and it's gonna be dealt with in 10 years and then even more things
exactly.
could happen. It's like, no, we're like it's being addressed now. And as horrible as it is, there is a positive aspect to that. And I don't think we can lose sight of that. That's a really great point.
Yeah, I think of it sort of like, you know, like a Pandora's box, kind of like we've opened it now and there's no closing it. There's no putting back in what has come out. And if, we had gotten President Harris and, we'd be like a year and a half in now, I don't think any of that would have happened.
Yeah.
And I guess, like you said, a great way to say it, silver linings.
Yeah. And you have been impacted by all of the suppression and disinformation that we have just discussed. You've been
Hmm.
affected by it on your social media and the work that you do. I'm going to assume it's affected you financially in some ways on social media. Um,
Correct.
and I just want to know your story when it comes to the suppression and disinformation campaigns that are going on and how it's impacted you. And there's a point to this. We're going to get to it, but I just want to hear from you on the impact of all of that first.
Yeah, I guess I'll start by saying it is bad. Like it is bad and it's blatant. They're not even really trying to hide it anymore. Um, a great example is, I guess it was about a week ago at the time of this recording, during the midterm election or primaries for the midterm elections that we just saw, in a couple states. And creators, including myself, that entire day, like, could not post. I think a few others that were included, like bigger names, like Aaron Parnas.
Mhm.
I know there were a few others too that, the day of, we all couldn't see each other's stuff. So it was like,
Yes.
is this only happening to me? And then, the next day, stuff started getting pushed out after, the elections were over. And it looks, or it seems to be done very strategically and for intentional reasons. And I think it's very surreal living in, the United States where supposedly there's, this tenet of free speech as like a central core value. And, we can play it up to like, oh, the app was being jittery, or, it was a one off, whatever excuse they come out and provide us with. We all know it's BS. We know what they're doing. Whenever I have videos personally that don't, you know, go anywhere, after being or doing this for like a year and a half, you get to a point where like when it's happening. If you
Yeah.
post a video and, after like a minute, it has like, you know, a couple dozen views, you're like, okay, that one's well on its way. But if it sits there for an hour and it has like one view, you're like, okay, that one is purposefully being suppressed. And once I started really getting, off the ground and got into the creator rewards program on TikTok and started actually earning some money for doing that, was when we saw, that initial, I don't even want to say takeover, but when we thought it was going to leave and then it came back the next day with that message, like thanking President Trump,
The worst 12
that was
hours of all
when,
of our lives.
literally, when we fled to Red Note. Um, but that was when I started to see my my reach and my engagement, and then as a result, the payout was like throttled. And don't get me wrong, it was still better than nothing because the other option was I was unemployed. So I kept going, I kept at it, thinking, maybe I just need to reconfigure what I post. But then I kind of thought that like that's exactly what the intention is. They want us to stop talking about this and talk about the things that we will be rewarded for.
Hmm.
And I think that kind of lit a new fire in me to just do it because I want to do it and not because of anything that's being given to me in return.
For sure.
Um, but then later down the road, we saw like the actual takeover. And the US now having its own version, or however that all ended up working. And, kind of like how we started this little section of the conversation talking about like just the primaries for the midterms last week. It was they either will completely suppress your videos or they will keep entire trends or news events off of your timeline. Like we were told that when they officially withdrew from Minneapolis that they were gone. And that very much is not the case. They're still there
Yeah.
and they're still doing what they're doing. It's just we're not seeing it.
Yep.
And even, bigger, more worldly things like what we're doing in Iran. Like it's you don't see it unless you are purposefully searching for it. Or if, one video happens to, poke through the algorithm and you see it. Or, there's it sucks.
Yeah.
In short,
Yeah.
I guess.
To your point, it was really, really scary when all of the censorship was happening with a handover of TikTok to the US owners, I believe. Doesn't Oracle own TikTok now?
I think so. I think that's the one.
Yeah. So the Minnesota shootings happen at the same time they're handing over the ownership to Oracle. So we're told there was an outage due to weather, and the handover was causing all the suppression. I was impacted by it. I post like 6 videos in a day, and each one might get 10 views after sitting in review for like 10 hours. And I was like, okay, this is
Yep.
just weird. I'm gonna believe it's due to the weather. I'll give it a second chance, whatever. And then last week with the midterm primaries at the same time as Iran was happening, it happened again. And if you go to TikTok
Mm-hmm.
support, they're telling you, oh, we had a server outage. It's like, okay, so you had a server outage at two very important times within a month of each other. Like,
Right.
let's be real here. Let's be real.
Yeah.
And
Like, please, let's be real. Please.
yes, and so another time when I noticed that there was a lot of suppression going on, and I thought I was like a conspiracy theorist thinking, okay, this app is like censoring so many people, so many topics, whatever, was when the Sasha Riley story came out. And
Mm-hmm.
I think am a product of that censorship. I take ownership. I could have gone to Reddit and to other platforms to read
Right.
about it, but like I was ill informed on TikTok. But what I understand is that Sasha Riley is a war veteran who is on these tapes talking about trafficking and abuse as it relates to Epstein. And anytime anyone would make content about it, it was suppressed. And it was so important for people to hear. And it should have been one of the biggest stories during that time period. It should have been the story. And
Mm-hmm.
somehow it wasn't. And you were making a lot of videos on this topic. And I
Yeah.
would hate to think that there might have been consequences on the algorithm for everything that you did to speak out about it. But be my teacher for a minute and like inform me and my audience on the severity of Sasha Riley and the importance of knowing about what all happened during those recordings and what they revealed.
Yeah. Um, that is a heavy one.
Yeah.
Um, for me personally, it was, I think, one of those first instances where you hear the graphic details of it all. I think that because of everything coming out about Epstein and that whole, criminal cabal and everything they're doing, it in our heads, I think, is just like this abstract, vague thing. And I think that that is ultimately too what causes some people to just tune it out and say, well, that's not true, or that didn't happen, or I've never heard about that, so it didn't, all the
Yeah.
excuses that are made. And I think that this story, Sasha's story, is just, I don't even want to say the first, but one of the first mainstream ones of many, many, many that are going to come out. We're already kind of seeing, more people come forward with their own, whether it be a new independent testimony. I mean, the journalist Lisa Noel Voldang, who did the interviews with Sasha, just posted another one recently with another victim, another survivor with eerily similar stories. And whether it be that, whether it be a new survivor independently on their own speaking out, or just a seemingly everyday person like you or me
Hmm.
hearing just the right thing from these survivors that helps them remember something or just heal.
Yeah.
I see a lot of comments specifically on some of the videos I did to, spread the word about this, of people just being so very open and transparent and sharing things that happened to them.
Yeah.
And some people, have been grappling with it for a long time and have known, but a good amount too were saying like, I I heard Sasha or someone else, I heard something that like triggered something in me and caused me to remember all this stuff. And now I'm having conversations with my family and talking to other people, and I think that really just adds to this idea that everyone's waking up
Yeah. Yeah.
and realizing that what we have been told is real isn't. Like, and I think even to, what you said a second ago about you felt like a conspiracy theorist, like I think we all right now, like a little bit feel that, because we've been told that all this stuff doesn't happen, and that, it may be, you know, one or two or, one off things. Like, of course, there are bad people out there, yada, yada, yada. But when I listened to Sasha's testimony specifically, it was one of those, I think, clear eyed moments where I was like, yes, this is like unfathomable, but like, I don't think that that means it should be disregarded.
Yep. Yep.
And I think that we hear about all these things that supposedly go bump in the night. And that's kind of all they stay as, like these theories or these, like tales. But like they're all true, you know? And I kind of said before, I think, like the Pandora's box of it all. Like it just feels like something clicked and you can't now unknow this stuff. Um, and I think that Sasha Riley represents something that is larger
Yeah.
than just specifically what happened to them or what
Yep.
happened to, the other survivors. Not just, even the system that allowed it to happen and go on for so long, but this idea of resilience. And I think that, especially right now, hope can be a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
And in times like this, it's really one of the last things we have to hold on to.
Yeah.
And I think we got to hold on to it. We got to band together. And perhaps most importantly, not be so quick to disbelieve something because it's unbelievable. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That that's so true because, there are times when, like, my boyfriend's talking to me about a story, and it's the first time I'm hearing something, and I'm like, "That that sounds so out there, like, I don't believe it," and I have to check myself, and I'm like, "Okay, the times we're
Right.
living in, it's possible," and I think the Sasha Riley story really highlights the importance of independent journalists in media outlets. Es
Absolutely.
especially with, as we were talking about with Larry Ellison and CBS, and now we're seeing, CNN potentially being bought by Larry Ellison. You can't trust them to cover these stories in the way that they need to, so we have to be looking at independent journalists for those facts. Even
Mhm.
when those journalists and storytellers are being silenced on the platforms that we rely on. And so one thing I wanted to ask you is this distinction between coincidence and coordination, because a lot of things, it might seem like a coincidence, and I think that's what they want us to think, but in reality, and I think you'll believe this. It's not a coincidence. It's actually a very deeply coordinated effort to
Mhm.
either silence a subject, silence a personality, knowing that they have ownership over the news media and they're not going to run the stories. So now the censorship is a way to now silence those independent journalists. Thoughts?
Yes. I don't believe there are coincidences anymore.
Mm,
At least not when it pertains to this administration and what they're doing. Um, I think like the word you used was perfect, coordination. It is very, very, very intentional and done. They they literally had the play like Project 2025. They had an entire playbook that outlined exactly what they aimed to do and exactly how they aimed to accomplish it.
yeah.
And yeah, it's they I think because someone like Donald Trump is the figurehead, the face of all of this, because he's an idiot. People assume that, they're just throwing stuff at the wall and they're all idiots. And
Yeah.
that is not true. Even though we like despise these people and they are, you know, evil and doing all these horrendous things, some of them, not all of them, are very smart and they know what they're doing. And they go out there. And when I'm saying this, I'm thinking of like Stephen Miller and as just one. And they know exactly what they're saying. They
Yep.
know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly when when to sprinkle in some truth to make you say, "Oh, well that's true. So everything else they're saying has to be true too."
Yep.
When I think that that's a big part that is hard for people to kind of wrap their heads around is like they're so careless and seemingly do this stuff, on a whim, but it's not on a whim. They This is part of the plan. And they've sure, maybe on a day-to-day basis, they have to pivot and do something a little different that they weren't expecting. But at the end of the day, they are always just trying to like veer themselves back on course to what they want to do.
Yep.
And one of these days, I think something's going to happen where they're not just veered off course a little bit, they're like flipped off the track
Yep.
and they won't be able to get back on. They won't
Yeah.
be able to salvage anything. And personally, I think that will be the Epstein files fully coming out.
Yeah.
Um, I think another thing on that is when you really just step back and think about like, obviously, if they had it their way, none of it would have come out at all. I mean, we saw Pam Bondi literally come out and say, there's nothing, case closed. And they tried to pass that off as the truth. And it wasn't, and if it hadn't been for people, protesting and coming out and demanding more, because there was more. The stuff that has come out wouldn't have ever come out. But
Hmm.
I think when I personally step back and I'm like, okay, this is just what they were willing to release.
Yeah.
Like, and if something this horrible is, considered like the least bad of it, what else could be in there
Yeah.
that they don't want out? Like, not even related to, the sex crimes and abuses themselves, but I mean, we've seen other stuff come out that is, alluding to Jeffrey Epstein having these deeper than we thought connections with
Yeah.
government officials all over the world, and
Yes.
primarily Israel. So it's like, what else is in there that they don't want us to see?
Yes.
And I think, I mean, not to beat a dead horse or repeat what I just said, but if this is what they thought was the least of it, like, it really makes me put that conspiracy theory tinfoil hat on and say, like, it nothing to me is like untrue anymore. Like, I
Yeah.
think anything is possible, as
Yep.
crazy as that sounds, but we're living in crazy times.
What you're just talking about was that there are things in the files that, if this is what is so bad, what are they actually hiding? If this is the extent and the extreme that they're going to cover certain things up, and this is what they're allowing us to see. I'm gonna put
Mhm.
my tinfoil hat on for a moment, and
Please.
I'm gonna peddle some conspiracy theories right now because I genuinely believe what is happening in Iran is a distraction from what potentially could come out that they're hiding in those files. We're partnered with Israel, which is red flag number one. What is what is
Okay.
BB holding over Trump's head to get us involved in a war that should not be happening? We have seen in the past that diplomacy does work as it relates to topics of Iran. Um, you have just all of this stuff that's happening. I think it's a distraction. I think they're holding things over Trump's head. And I would really appreciate your perspective and your viewpoint from what you're hearing about people online, your followers, what the public discourse is saying about what's happening with Iran as it relates to the Trump administration and the files.
Yeah, I think
That's a loaded
that's a
question.
really, yeah, a really good question though. Like, is it ultimately a distraction? Like, I I think it depends obviously on who you ask, but also how you think about it. Because I think on one hand you have the people who say, like, yes, of course, like, of course anyone could see that, and then, well, I guess still that group, I think there are those that think that it's because Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the apartheid state of Israel, is supposedly, dangling something, whether it be the Epstein files or something else, over Trump's head and making him dance, you know, to keep it concealed. And in this case, it isn't just for, like, getting more money from us, because we've been doing that for forever. It's about assisting in another imperialist land grab for the US and for Israel. And, you know, going sort of off of that, on the other hand, like, that's just what the US does. Like, historically, over and over and over. We see an economic system that isn't capitalism gaining traction elsewhere in the world,
Yep.
and we swoop in and pulverize it to cement capitalism as, the one true system, the one that works, when we know that's not true
Yes.
and far from it, even. So I think, like, intent aside, whether they're intentionally trying to do it as a distraction or not, I think the effect is that it ultimately does distract from Epstein, right? And I'm sure he isn't mad about that. Like, the problem is, though, maybe it doesn't line up exactly, but like the Barbara Streisand effect. The more you
Mhm.
try to get people to not pay attention to something, or you
Yes.
try to get them to look away, the more you're calling attention to it. And I think sort of what, oh, what?
I have to interject right there and just say that. It's that point because he's lied to all of his followers saying that his like all throughout the campaign trail that he's gonna end forever wars. He's not gonna launch any wars. He's all about peace. So
Mm-hmm,
why this switch all of a sudden? It just all of a
mm-hmm,
sudden happened. Now they're discussing boots on the ground. I just had to interject right there and say that because I want to bring that up again when you're done saying what you're saying. But the
mm-hmm.
Barbara Streisand effect really does like play into what's happening right now. That is such a good point. Okay, I'm so sorry. Had to interject. Continue.
Totally. No, all the more the merrier, whatever the saying is. Um, yeah, like I think that, I mean, even to what you just said there, like they, even when they switch up and do something literally the exact opposite of what they ran on and got people to vote for them for, even though, they voted for, other
Yeah.
reasons and blah blah blah. That was one of the main ones that they campaigned on. Um, like they some like I kind of alluded to earlier in this episode, like some people are realizing, some have realized, and some are still just going along. So I think there are some people who are, realizing the hypocrisy of it all and saying, like, I wanted this, you said you were going to do this, and now you're doing the opposite of it, but
Yes.
saying that this is what you were, like, acting like you were always going to do it. And I think that, especially like you said, with, the threat or the concept being floated of boots on the ground and, having another, like Iraq situation, another
Yeah.
Afghanistan situation where we're sending people over for no other reason but to like take and take more and take more. Like it, we of course push out the idea that we have to do it because we need to spread democracy, and anything that isn't a democracy is dangerous. Anything that isn't capitalist is dangerous or a threat to the US. And I think that people are realizing all these things all at the same time and thinking like it doesn't make sense why we're doing this again. And I think too, better or for worse, social media plays a huge role in it.
Yeah.
Because as we're seeing with the mainstream news, like, we talked about CBS and CNN, if it was just them telling us what was going on, like it was, 15, 20 years ago, everyone would just say, oh, that's why. Okay, that's fine. And now you see them say that, and then you hear sometimes it also helps that the president is stupid because he will go directly against the mainstream media, which he's supposed to be working like in lockstep with. They're
Yes.
supposed to be saying the same things. And it's supposed to be social media that's, saying the different thing. But he will, because he's stupid, will say something completely opposite, or make the people on the news look stupid or like they don't know what they're talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that the social media of it all, plus him being stupid, is helping people more basically see that thing, like there is no through line, there's no cohesiveness, there's no like similar message that is being put out. So on top of the confusion, there's, I guess, a sense of betrayal where people are realizing these institutions, these organizations, blah, 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 that we are supposed to just inherently trust are so easily lying.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think because they sound the same as they always have. So I think people are starting to realize a similar, I guess, line of thinking, like with the Epstein stuff coming out, is like, well, what does that mean about everything? Like, were they always lying through their teeth,
Yeah.
or is this new? And I think it's causing people, again, because this isn't the first instance that we've done this. We did it, Vietnam, like, you could go as far back as as far back as you want to. And then, of course, more recently, Iraq, Afghanistan, stuff like that, where people, it was like in their lifetime. So they remember
Yeah, yeah,
how pointless and dangerous and obscure this seems to be. And they're like, not only did you run on not doing this again, but you seem to be so like cavalier about just doing it again.
yeah,
And I
yes,
think that's really rubbing people the wrong way, especially the MAGA base that is supposedly so pro military. And we know that, they use the military as means to recruit low income people, more so people of color, things like that. So I think these communities that overlap a lot with the MAGA base and those that will be put on the front lines
yeah.
is causing that like cognitive dissonance in them for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. It's a chapter from an old playbook that they're using, but the difference is people are now more connected. They're communicating in new and different ways, and so that old playbook really isn't made for where we are as a society today. And to talk
Mm-hmm.
about the lies that are just being perpetuated, even just with Iran, you have Trump lying about the girl school, saying that it was a drone when we have images of it being a U.S. Tomahawk missile. You have the lie that Trump is saying no Americans are captured. You have Iran saying that Americans are captured. You don't know what the truth is. The
Mm-hmm.
number of deaths, there have been discrepancies in that from day one. It's like what is like it is just the lies are just so blatant. And I wish I could say it was shocking, but it's not. And I think there's a big difference between there's a lot of similarities between what's happening in Iran right now and with what happened in Iraq circa 20 or 2003. And I think
Mm-hmm.
after 9/11 there was this like acceptance we're attacked, boots on the ground might be necessary. So there was a catalyst
Mm-hmm.
for that justification, whether how popular or unpopular it was. People could at least wrap their minds around something for the decision making that was going to come from the White House. Now we knew there was no weapons of mass destruction. We know Condoleezza Rice was a huge architect for the perpetuation of that lie of weapons of mass destruction to get people into Iraq. Horrible. The enhanced
Mm-hmm.
interrogation methods that they used was also perpetuated from that lie, but there was still a catalyst for a justification for why boots would be on the ground. And I know, like back then, my dad was in the military and he was a part of one of the first units in Alabama to be deployed
Mm-hmm.
overseas after 9/11. And there was this like, there was just this idea like, yeah, it's horrible, but like this is what you signed up for. And like you are actually fighting for something. And today I think the difference is like, what are they fighting for? Other than one man's ego, there was no catalyst. You are literally
Mm-hmm.
fighting because Bibi Netanyahu is telling you that this is what you need to do and why, because he's holding something over his head at what cost? At the cost of American lives. And I think that is where the disconnect is and where the miscalculation is on Trump's part. I think he looks back 23 years ago and sees, well, there's a lot of public support for Iraq, so it's going to happen again. It's like, no, we weren't
Yeah.
attacked. We're not stupid. And then last week, you saw Condoleezza Rice at the White House, and that should be red flag number one. She should never be allowed near a government complex building ever again. And yet she's was seen at the White House. And then what happened in the news the next day? You saw Trump talking about boots on the ground in Iran. And
Yeah.
again, I don't believe in coincidence either. I think that was coordination. And so,
Yep.
all of that to say, I just think what is happening overseas right now, it's horrible. It's awful. I don't think there is a fight for the greater good. I really genuinely believe it is just a distraction and it's in an agreement with Israel because they're holding something over Trump's head. And I think we all know what that something is.
Yeah. I I agree, and I think that the point you made about not, there not being like a catalyst or a specific event that they can use to justify what they're doing. I think that was a great thing to point out. And that is probably why people are having that cognitive dissonance now and being like, well, wait, why? Like, why again? And there's no answer. It's just like, oh, well, they're going to attack Israel. And it's like, okay, well, lies
Israel's
that
been
are
peddling that
problems.
lie for 40 years now. It
Yes,
doesn't work.
I was gonna say I love, but I don't love. It's just it's so fascinating to see that like compilation video of Netanyahu coming to like the UN or the US or whatever, and for decades, I love not again not love. It's just it's insane that he will be like they're this close to like, and it's like no, they aren't. Like you've been saying
They've
that
been
for
10 days away.
decades.
Yeah, they've been saying they're 10 days away from a nuclear weapon since like I think it was
Yeah,
like 1989 or 1990. And you could say you love that video solely for the fact that, and that's okay because yeah,
it
I love
exposes
the
him.
fact. Yes, I'm so happy that it is so easy to create something so simple to show the impact and the lie. I love that. Like more of that, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Before
I agree.
before we start rounding out this episode, I want to continue to talk about that American defense, but in terms of the defense, the DHS and Christy Nome and Mark Wayne Mullen, you made videos about this. I thought about making videos like this. I saw a lot of other creators make videos like this where we are celebrating the loss of Christy Nome, and that is to be celebrated. When
Right.
should that celebrating stop when we realize who's going to be replacing her?
Oh, like it was almost immediate. Like, because obviously the news came out at the same time. So it was immediately like she's gone and she will be replaced by this person. And so I got a bunch of people on the video where I was celebrating, which even in the video I posted, it was kind of like more about the conflicting feeling in that moment of, well, I want to celebrate, but I know, like, we know what's also coming,
Yeah.
and that's arguably worse.
Yep.
So you of course have a range of people that think a range of different things. Some people thinking, you shouldn't celebrate. You shouldn't celebrate at all. Like this is just bad, and it's going to get worse. And on a very basic level, true, I suppose. But I think kind of what I said earlier, like hope is a very powerful thing, and going off of that, celebrating and being joyful is, I think, also another antidote to what's being thrown at us all the time. And they want us to be anxious and scared and terrified. And I think, like we see with the ICE invasions, if you want to call them that, like they want people to cower at the sight of them and
Yeah.
obey. And it enrages them all the more that we aren't doing that, that we're fighting back. And then my favorite videos are the people like bullying ICE and calling them names and just laughing in their face. Like they hate it. They literally hate it so much. And I think there's something in their head where they're not getting it. Like they should be afraid of me. And it's like, no, like they don't even realize that us not giving into it is also a form of resistance. And even like something that just popped into my head was, I guess it was maybe in LA when they sent the National Guard in. Is that maybe what it was? When
They
people in like the
started with
dinosaur
LA.
costumes and the
Yes.
frog, yes, when the people and the dinosaur costumes and the frog costumes were coming out, and yeah, like it was just like a silly thing, but it also, I think, portrayed to them like this is how seriously we take y'all. Like
Yes.
we don't take y'all. You're not serious people.
Yep.
Sure, you have serious power, and you're doing things that have very serious consequences.
Yeah.
But like you're all just a bunch of little obedient soldiers that are doing what you're told. Like you're not your own person fighting for a good cause. You're just listening to a fascist tell you what to do. And I think that it's a very different landscape than it was even then. I think back then people genuinely were very afraid,
Yeah.
and they were like, well, if he can do this here, where else is he going to do it? And I think it's it's even hard to say that it's dialed down because I think in some ways it's amped up
Yeah.
and gotten worse. But I think the resistance has matched that and met them where they are. And when they go harder, we go harder.
Yeah.
And I think that that will I think help us, and that will ultimately be what causes them to lose. Is that there are so many more of us than there are of them.
Yes. And, my friend Josh, he is, I believe, the director of communications for the Senate Judiciary Committee. And he made a video where
Mm.
he was doing it's not like the ice challenge, but he was doing pretty much the regimen that they have to do in order to prove that the physical fitness test that they have to do in order to become an ICE agent. And he was showing how easy it was. And I mean, it went viral online, but he had
Mhm.
confirmation that Christy Nome and DHS saw that video. And I think it speaks volumes to where their priorities are, because they weren't mad that it's super easy for anyone to be put in that position. It's not violations against Americans and the Constitution, but they were pissed that he made that video, and it caused like an internal crisis at DHS. And I think that speaks volumes to where their morals and their standards are. It's absolutely crazy, but I say that because it is so easy for us to continue to make fun of them and to point our finger at like how big of a joke they are. Just like with Mark Wayne Mullen, if he thinks he's going to have a free pass, I'm sorry, but he said, "I'm sorry, that was a misspoke." Are you kidding me? Like, you're not even in the office yet, and the material is writing itself. Like, I am not going to
Right.
take it easy on you.
Oh, Mark Wayne Mullen. I mean, like between Christy Nome and him, like talk about Dumb and Dumber. Like
Yeah.
it's it's much like everything else going on. It's sort of unbelievable
Yep.
that, and I literally have a video in my drafts right now that I filmed like just before hopping on here, is like, and it was like a take that I see, recycled in those posts on social media and stuff. But it was essentially about like Republicans go so hard to say that like AOC isn't qualified and that she's just a bartender and she has no experience, yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, she has a dual degree in economics and international relations, which like seems like the two things that would really qualify you, right? So, and then you look at Mark Wayne Mullen, and he, before becoming a senator from Oklahoma, he was a plumber. And nothing against plumbers. Sure, like that's who they wanted to vote for, I guess. But he to say or act as if he is even remotely qualified when they put so much emphasis on qualification and
Yeah.
experience is unbelievable. It's laughable.
Yeah.
And I it's an interesting thing to see unfold because we saw all these initial nominations to the cabinet last year, and we thought there's no way a majority of them or any of them will be confirmed. There's just no way. None of them are qualified. None of them have any experience. And at the end of the day, they're all incompetent.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. And then one after another, they all were. So I think even though things in the climate and the landscape have changed a lot because of all the resistance and all the pushback, I could see it go both ways. I could see, enough senators maybe having a backbone to say no. I hope with all my heart that's what happens. But the logic part of my brain just looks at precedent. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, we thought that last time and it didn't happen. And all those senators are still senators. So I don't know. I really am hoping for the best and preparing for the worst, I suppose, is a good way to sum it
Yeah.
up.
To highlight the incompetence part, I think what really shows the incompetence of what's going on with DHS and the administration and Kristi Noem and Mark Wayne Mullen really is the fact that it wasn't the violations to the Constitution. It wasn't really, that's it. It wasn't the violations to the Constitution that got her out. It was a $220 million ad of her riding a horse
Yeah.
that got her removed. And if there's anything that says, I think it is incompetence. But you know what? Before I ask you,
Which even, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, like,
no, go ahead.
Even like that, I would push back on and say, like, I don't even think it was the ad itself. It was the fact that she exposed that Trump like okayed it and like rubber stamped it, and it made him look bad. And yes, exactly. I think that was ultimately the thing that, you know, put the nail in her coffin, so to speak.
Thank God
Which tells you all you need to know.
Yep. Before I ask you the final question of what it is that you're not wrong about, I want to just play a quick game with you. I played this with Suzanne, and I really appreciated her answers to some of the people that I brought up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name just a few Republicans, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to your mind when you hear their name. Is that fine?
Yes, so many, but I'll try to stick to the first one.
Okay, Pete Hegseth.
Drunk.
Perfect. Pam Bondi.
Unqualified.
Okay. Mark Wayne Mullen.
Stupid.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Tired.
You know, I also have to interject here and say, I hate that we live in a society where I find myself actually like now agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene on some things. I know compromise is good. I know finding middle ground is good, but it like her, this is where we find ourselves.
Yeah. And I will say, like, she's agreeing with us. You know, like it may seem like
great point.
Because we are seeing her take. It's like, oh, like not me agreeing with her, but it's like, no, like we've thought this before her. She's agreeing with us. She finally just caught up.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That I instantly feel better about that actually. But the final one, Lindsey Graham.
A pedophile.
Oh, that's true. I was hoping you're going to say gay, but I mean, I'll take pedophile. You know what's coming. The final question, Michael, what is it that you are not wrong about?
I am not wrong about this will end. I know there are a lot of people out there who think that because what's happening, it hasn't been stopped, that it won't ever be stopped. But it will. And that, you know, doesn't mean that we shouldn't just, or that we should just throw our hands up and wait for it to come in like the tide. You know, we have to work together, and I guess at risk of pushing the metaphor, we have to be like tectonic plates and make like a tsunami and make it undeniable so that it can be stopped, and people will stop thinking that what's going on either isn't serious or isn't happening at all. It is, but it will end one of these days.
I'm holding you to that. It better. I'm putting my hope and my trust and my faith in your words right now.
Okay.
Michael, thank you so much for coming back on today. I really appreciate it. Your insight, your wisdom, everything that you bring to the table, from your expertise and what you hear online from all of your followers, and bringing that to our audience. I'm so appreciative. As I hope you have listened and heard, and if not, the saying goes on He's Not Wrong is if you come on the podcast more than once, you're now a correspondent. So I'm adding you to my correspondent list. So you join the ranks of my friend Dr. Benjamin Arnberg, Mallory Hagan, Gay Valamont. Gay is a correspondent for He's Not Wrong. I'm in the process of making a page on my website to have all of y'all's headshots on there for my correspondence. So as an official correspondent of He's Not Wrong, we look forward to having you back on very, very soon. And I appreciate your time so much.
I greatly appreciate it too. And I look forward to more correspondence.